I kind of begrudgingly respect just the dedication to not getting better at what you do for a living. Just coast through life.
It probably shouldn't even happen.
If you got it, you got to flaunt it, Acid.
You know what? I got a lot of stuff that I don't want to flaunt, and so I just keep it to myself.
Jeremy is really big into the used mattresses. That's an excellent deal.
He has a used mattress store on the side.
I'm not going to pull the pants down without the pants down cue.
And we found out that Anthony's friends are all 13-year-old boys. Nice.
Clay, how you doing?
Doing a little more poorly after that terrible introduction. I was just fine, to be honest with you.
Just to talk to these two fellas. It's been a while since we've had a Sci-Fi Gangsters episode. We got a lot to catch up on. That's what we'll be doing primarily in this particular episode. But I'm excited about our guest today, Claiborne Cox, one of the funniest guys that I know, which is required for me to say by this list of things that Claiborne is making me say before. Check out ClaiborneCoxComedy.com. He's a great guy. He's dressed as Santa. He's creepy Santa today. But our topic for today, we don't have an official topic. We're just catching up with each other, just hanging out with the bros. The squad is what we're doing today. I guess I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. But before we get started, let's go ahead and introduce our panel here. First, I mentioned him already, Claiborne Cox. Clay, how you doing?
Well, I was doing fine, Anthony, until the introduction. And I'm going to be honest, that was pretty cutting and embarrassing and insulting, and I don't appreciate it. So,
right. Sorry, I gotta say it one more time. Claiborne Cox Comedy. He said I gotta do it 5 times. ClaiborneCoxComedy.com. You can check out all his stuff. You know, when I reached out to Clay, I said, because it can be hard sometimes to get a hold of Claiborne Cox. He's very busy making students Photoshop him into things. And so when I texted him, I said, "Hey, you want to be on the show?" 3 days later, I got a text back, and he said, "Sure." And now we have him on the show. Always excited to have him on. Clay is the semester. My son, he's off school right now. He's on his winter break because all the kids are not in school right now. You're enjoying your time off.
Yeah, it's great. We last night, me and my family worked on a puzzle. How long has it been since you got to just sit down and work on a puzzle? You know,
I don't do that. That's against my religion. I don't do puzzles.
Was that an enjoyable experience, sitting down with the puzzle? Did you guys have a good time doing that?
I'll say no, it's okay.
So here's the thing. I'm not proud of this, but if I'm being honest, I was craving to sit down and do a puzzle. I don't know.
Why would you want to do that?
I can understand that being a relaxing experience for you, just to be able to sit down and just kind of, relax for a little bit. I completely get it, Clay. You don't have to explain yourself. Put your puzzles together. Have a good time.
So can I ask, when I dress like Santa, why is the one adjective you decided to throw in there creepy Santa? Like, that's not part of my intended wardrobe.
I don't know, Clay. I apologize for that. That's the first adjective that came to my mind. And sometimes I just say things that come to my mind, It doesn't mean anything that I described you as creepy, right? Grungy. I could have gone with grungy. I'm just saying that was one of the words that I chose. But once again, always good to have you here. And you can tell by the way that I've been treating you so far.
Indeed.
We'll get back to you in a second, Clay. But let's go ahead and introduce the producer of the show, Acidtrain, full name. I call him Acid for short, right? Because that's cool.
It's cool.
Acidtrain, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that the show episode is sponsored by ClaiborneCoxComedy.com. Make sure you go on over there. Look at this beautiful artwork he has on his website. You can see it right now.
There you go.
Follow Claiborne Cox on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't already, there's something wrong with you. So, but yeah, I'm doing pretty good. in the holiday spirit, as you can tell. Let's get the Star Trek holidays on. Yeah, we got more Christmas coming my way, in the form of the in-laws on Friday, and we had my parents on this past Sunday, which was interesting. So.
Now, are you doing any traveling for the holidays? I'm looking forward to a non-traveling Christmas holiday because of all the traveling for Thanksgiving and everything else that I've been doing. Looking forward to just sitting down. Are you traveling?
Yes, I am traveling. I went to the far-off magical land of Tigertown and got my haircut today.
Okay.
It was glorious.
Did you go to Great Clips?
I went to Sports Clips. Yes, I went to Sports Clips and got it done. And look pretty good. Looking sharp. I think. They give you the towel on the face and the the massage scalp and all this stuff. It was great. I don't do it very often, but I'll do it 2-3 times a year just to kind of treat myself to a man spa, if you want to call it that. The man spa is over at Sports Clips. Not sponsored, by the way. We are sponsored today by ClayburnCoxComedy.com. Make sure you head on over there. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Claybern,
every time we say that, we get $5.
Have you done? What's the most recent comedy show that you've done, and why did it go so poorly?
Why would you assume that? You didn't ask how it went yet, Anthony. I hate you. Okay, so the last one I did, it was in Texas. It was in Missouri City, Texas, which is like I don't know, sort of greater Houston area. And it was a big fun group. Here's the thing. Okay. So some groups want to be spoken in front of, like a theater type audience. They're there to be passively entertained, right? I mean, that's kind of common, right? They sit and receive. This group, they wanted to actively be entertained. And so there was much crowd work involved, and it was lots of fun. So they did not want to just sit and listen, which is fine by me because neither do my students. So I'm kind of used to that.
Well, very good. Excellent. Everything's been going pretty well for you. You still got those gigs, still traveling the country?
I mean, to some extent, that's all relative. I have not hit all 50 states to be sure, but West Virginia is on the docket, a couple of Georgia shows, and 2023 is looking a lot better than 2020 was. And so, if we can keep going this direction, then that'll be good. How about you? Are you doing some shows too?
Oh, no. I goof around in the classroom all the time. As I always say, my classroom is my stage. But I goof around the classroom, but then no, I have not done stand-up in a very, very long time.
Would you like to again? Do you miss
his comedy comes in the form of all of his student evaluations. So you should take a gander at this.
True. You should hear some of the things they say about me. No, it's funny because I've thought from time to time about maybe going to like No Shame in Columbus, Georgia, which would be a great venue to come back to, right, and try out some jokes. And I have written jokes down. Like I have a document where I'll write jokes down just to come like, yeah, if I ever try this again, maybe I'll try these kind of jokes out on people. But it's been a very long time since I've done like traditional stand-up comedy. Once again, I do goof around a lot in the classroom. The question of the day is basically where I'm doing crowd work, where I'm goofing around with students. So everything that I would get from stand-up or everything that I enjoyed about stand-up, I'm getting in the classroom.
Right. I don't think that doesn't count. You know what I mean? Really. Yeah. Like it dawned on me one day, Anthony, the people who do comedy full time, they have a great advantage and they utilize it. They sit and write jokes a lot and they write really good ones, But the advantage that we have is we're in front of a crowd doing crowd work essentially all day, every day. And they don't have that advantage. Like we more so have that advantage. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They do crowd work during a part of their show, maybe 2 days a week for maybe an hour. We do it for our livelihood. And so that is add us on that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, definitely. And the funny thing about it is, I'll do my little shtick during the question of the day, right? And then it usually goes pretty well. Sometimes I've had classes, and I mean like the whole class, the semester, where they just were not enjoying what I was doing during the at all, like just not enjoying what I was doing. And then I've had classes where I've had like standing ovations. Not really, that's an exaggeration, but they people tell me that how much they enjoy the question of the day. A lot of it has to do with the fact that they're also goofing around, and I think that has a lot to do with why they enjoy it so much, because most of the humor is coming from them, right? I just have to get it out of them, which is what crowd work is anyways. Like it's like you say something, okay, now I'm going to say something back to get you to say something back, and then that's where the funny thing comes from. It comes from the students. So it's an enjoyable process, and really that's one of the things I definitely do miss about stand-up is the feedback that you get, like the instant gratification, and I'm getting that in the classroom in so many ways. So, but yeah, maybe eventually I'll try out again. I don't know, but yeah, but. You're still out there grinding, doing your thing.
I mean, I don't know if I'd call it grinding. I'm not doing enough shows to call it grinding, but I'm enjoying the ones that come. Things are certainly thought out more so than they were 2 years ago, and so I'm not going out every weekend by any means or something like that. But again, like yourself, the classroom scratches my itch quite a bit, and so somebody asked me on another podcast a few months ago if I had to give up one or the other, which one would I prefer to give up? And I would prefer to give up stand up altogether and continue teaching if that, if push came to shove. So
yeah, and it's kind of interesting because I teach at Auburn and I teach at Georgia State, and they're very different classes in terms of how they're structured, not just the students themselves, which the students are different in a lot of ways, but the makeup of the class is very different as well. So I also get sort of the thrill of actually teaching is also part of it, right? As well. So I enjoy how those two are integrated in together. Yeah. Would I like to try some jokes out on stage? Of course, but when will that happen? I don't know. Let me ask you this. Obviously, we're getting away from the pandemic. A lot of your stand-up was focused on how COVID is a hoax, right? You were doing that whole little thing where you're calling everybody sheep and everything. You were bawling on stage. Isn't that what you were doing?
I was not. You got the wrong guy.
In fact, we have a clip here. We're gonna just show it.
Oh boy, man. So I have really smart friends who are on both sides of that spectrum. And there's a lot of crazy stuff. I don't know what's right and what's not. I will tell you, I was vaccinated twice and got the booster personally, but I have some smart friends who did not. And, people feel so strongly either way. And so long story short, I don't appreciate you putting me on the spot like that.
I think this is a recurring bit that I did. I think every time I've had you on a show, I've framed you as someone who just baws on stage. You're all sheep. I think it's actually Jim Brewer who does that now?
Yeah.
He does that now. Where his whole comedy routine is just calling everybody idiots for getting vaccinated. It's like, okay, dude. So I just found that was humorous. I found that humorous to frame you in that light. And of course, that's not you. I mean,
you always have enjoyed that. So, okay, this is speaking of, conspiracy theories and stuff like that. The best flat earth conspiracy theory argument I've ever heard. They said, if the earth was not flat, then we wouldn't have to go up in an airplane. We would just continuously stay level, because if there were a curve to the earth, that would, via V, get us off the ground. So I'm like, that's checkmate.
Solid argument. Makes sense.
If you didn't know now, if you didn't know then, you know now.
I love it. My favorite thing about the flat earth is the fact that Australia isn't real. Like Australia is this whole like conspiracy.
It is.
Like I don't know why Australia
It's
has
made up.
something to do with the flat Earth, but like apparently Australia does not exist,
Mm.
and everyone's making it up.
No one's ever been.
I didn't realize that they're okay. Are those two actually connected in the bit? Is that
I'm pretty sure flat earthers, like the theory that Australia does not exist, is part of it. I don't know why, but it is.
so? Here's what I will say about conspiracy theorists. Okay, so like back in kindergarten, when there's a little kid in your class named Bobby, and Bobby stole something from you. He just outright stole it from you, and you had no idea. Bobby hid it well, right? Well, Bobby grew up and Bobby became a president or a CEO of a major company. And Bobby still does that kind of stuff and he does hide it and cover it up well. So I'm sure there are a lot of like very valid, legitimate conspiracy theories. I think we just maybe sometimes, maybe we don't always uncover the right ones. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of crazy stuff out there, I'm sure.
That's true. I'm sure. And of course, you can always check out all of Claiborne Cox's conspiracy theories at claibornecox.com. He's got a whole section on QAnon and the JFK assassination. You can definitely check that out. He's got photos of himself at the Capitol. Now I'm really framing you as a horrible person. That was crossing the line there a little bit.
You crossed the line a while back. You found another line and crossed that other line also.
Dove across the line.
Claiborne, I didn't know if you know this, but obviously I'm getting my PhD and my dissertation is on the Capitol insurrectionists. So that's kind of why that's so like on the surface of that's always why I make jokes about it and references to it, because I do research it so much that oftentimes I feel like I need to joke about it to keep myself sane.
Sure.
Yeah.
Have you learned some new nuances about that you could share?
I mean, I could talk all day about my dissertation, but basically what I'm talking about is I'm framing sort of the Capitol insurrectionists as fans and their acts as playful. So it starts off as a playful act in terms of, like you're playing out a particular identity, but you're also, it's almost like it's fan theories. Like, when you watch a film and you're a big fan of it and then you dissect it to the point where you're like, oh, this is my fan theory about it. It's a fun thing that you can do. There's nothing particularly inherently wrong about that. But what ends up happening is you have people that have quote unquote fan theories about the election. And then that spirals out of control. And then you end up with someone storming the Capitol, right? Where there's a huge gap there, but there's like boom, 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 boom. And I write about how social media plays into this as well. So yeah. So once again, as someone who has done like my nose is in like all the FBI documents and researching and reading all the literature on how conspiracy works and how all this kind of stuff works. As someone who's like my psyche, I'm slowly kind of losing my mind a little bit. Sometimes I need to joke about it sometimes. From time to time.
I see. That's very interesting. Fan fiction on reality. That's an interesting take,
Yeah, it's fan fiction in a lot of ways, and it's playing with like the people who are storming the Capitol were playing spy at the Capitol building. You're playing spy, or you're playing army. The people who are wearing tactical gear and they're going to the polls to protect the polls, they're playing army, right? And that, I mean, obviously they're taking it very seriously, and it could be very dangerous type of play. But play, I mean, for those who play scholars, right? They say that play can be dangerous, but play does not mean that it's benign, right? It can end up being dangerous. That was dissertation talk. The acid is falling asleep. Very good, excellent. But Clay, you're still everything going well. What's your next comedy show?
It's just outside of Atlanta, and it's a corporate gig. So I think it's like a cool company. They're either looking for future clientele or rewarding their current clientele. It's some kind of corporate thing in Atlanta-ish. That's
Let
the
me
main.
ask you this, Clay. Obviously, you hear a lot of comedians talking about horror stories about corporate gigs. What do you feel? How do you feel about corporate gigs?
Um, there's so many variables. I honestly have not done many corporate gigs, and I have not had any terrible experiences at corporate gigs. The last one I can remember was just all kinds of fun, and everything is better than Zoom shows when you're trying to do stand-up comedy. Like that is just a nuance of comedy that is not ideal. Everybody will mute their computers, and they'll sometimes put up the little icon. And so you're just talking to no one. You're telling jokes to brick walls, and you don't know how they feel about it. And there's no like synergy, so everything's better than that.
That's kind of how I felt when I was teaching online for several years. You're like, are people listening to me? Are they engaging? Really, my teaching style is very dependent on the audience as well, like on my students. So like getting feedback from students, getting them to answer questions is so integral to my teaching methodology, if you will, right? So if I'm not a lecturer, so you're not going to see me stand up in front of a class and just talk. That's not how I teach. It's question and answer. I ask a question, I expect students to answer.
Sure.
So it's kind of a lot of that going on. So when I'm during the pandemic, although I kind of found ways to get around it, like it was still never perfect, but yeah, it was definitely it drained the energy out of you. As someone, I'm a very needy extrovert. That's why I always say to people, I'm a very needy extrovert. In other words, I need something from my audience to get energy. And if I don't get anything from my audience, I lose my energy and I lose my interest in my own teaching. I'll lose interest very quickly.
I can see that. I can, yeah, that makes sense. The response almost like fuels us, yeah, it's very, very akin to running out of gas when there's no energy from the crowds. It's kind of a relational job,
It's kind of like live streaming to a crowd of zero.
So sure.
Yes. And that's why
I did yesterday a little bit. That's great.
That's why radio.
What we're doing right now.
That's one of the things about doing radio for so long. When I did radio, is that it's so you feel like you're talking into a void and you don't know who's enjoying it. Every once in a while, you'll hear someone say, "Hey, I heard that joke on the radio. That was funny." And you're like, "Oh, tell me more. What did you like about it?" Like you're like all over them.
With radio, you've got a sense of, okay, people are listening because I'm on a radio. I mean, it's not a huge major network, but
I don't know about that.
They're obviously still broadcasting and they have employees, so somebody's listening. The companies are paying for ad spots, so they're making their money somehow. But like with live streaming, like when I was streaming on Twitch yesterday, you can see that number. You can see that fat zero right there on the screen, and it's just, it gets so demoralizing. You get, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people, whatever, that show up and hang out, and they'll put their screen on mute, or they'll walk away and do whatever they got to do, which is, it's fine and whatnot. But it's just, how do you keep your energy going for several hours at a time? I mean, I don't get how some of these big streamers do it day in and day out. Granted, they're streaming to tens of thousands of people and the chat's always going. But I mean, even with that, I mean, how do you do it for 8 hours a day? It's crazy. I guess when you make $6 million a day, you can do that. But
there's actually a lot of literature on YouTubers and streamers and how like the amount of work they do is disproportional to what they get. I mean, they get a lot of money. Like the top streamers get a lot of money, but that most people, they're doing way more work than what they're getting back. Which explains why so many have mental, like they need mental breaks. Like they'll say, "Hey, I can't do this anymore," which I have no interest in that whatsoever. That just seems like way too much work for me. That's why I don't assign papers. because I don't want to read papers.
You don't want to read papers.
Like I don't want to do the work.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Do you think there's almost the reverse of what we were talking about, Anthony? I'm curious about this because in humanity, conversations are two ways, always have been, or if there are 10 people in the room, let's say there's, it's a 10-way relationship. So COVID made it to where it was one way, we were putting out and getting nothing in return. But now with these multi-thousand follower streamers, they're putting out and getting in return, tens of thousands. That just seems unnatural. You know what I mean? Like in human history, that did not happen. Like, I wonder if that is part of the mental breakdown. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not a banter back and forth, traditional, normal type relationship. Like I say things and I get responses from 10,000 people. Like, what even is that by compared with anything else in human history?
You're still entertaining. You're entertaining 10,000 people, but you're also entertaining nobody, because how do you respond to 10,000 people?
Yes.
So you have to just do, you do what you would do what you do if you streamed in front of zero, the same as if you were streaming in front of 1 million people.
Right. That makes sense.
I mean, where the mental breakdown comes in to play is like when I'm a teacher and I teach 4 classes an hour long, right? And that's the energy that I'm inputting into my classes, right? I have 4 classes that they're an hour long, and then I also teach other classes on Tuesday and Thursday. But anyways, so that's the time that I'm actually teaching. A streamer, you're constantly producing content over and over. There's no breaks. I can take vacations. I have summers. I have winter. For streamers, that's not an option. So that's the problem. Like that's the main concern, is that you're constantly having to produce content.
Because the minute you take a week off, you're following, like you lose 25% of your entire following because you're not there anymore. And then when you get back, it's too late because all of our attention spans are about the length of half of a French fry. I mean, it's not very long.
Yeah. So, but definitely. The funny thing about Zoom is when we first started going to Zoom, or we first started teaching virtually, I think there was a huge learning curve, and we didn't really know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And then I think after a while we started to catch on. So I think later on in the pandemic, especially when it started to get like hybrid teaching, where you would teach in person and then you teach online, and you kind of did that for a while, or at least I did. You start to kind of realize, okay, I can replicate the classroom as close as possible. But of course, a lot of it had to do with, like, you still had these hurdles of students. Obviously, you have to ask students to turn the cameras on. That's the first thing. And if they weren't turning the cameras on, then there's nothing you can do about that. Mm-hmm. So, I would ask a question, and then I would just wait in the Zoom session for someone to say something. Eventually, they caught on, and then you're like, okay, we can do this. This is possible. But it's just so much better in person. It just flows better. It's more fun. There's things you can do in the classroom to encourage participation. There's things you can do, like just walking around and and calling people out, and the person that's falling asleep. The person that's falling asleep in the first row. Clay, do you have this, by the way? This always fascinates me with students, because when you have a student who's falling asleep in the first row, like I'm 5 feet away from you. Do you really think that I can't see you falling asleep? Do you have this? Do your high schoolers fall asleep in your class?
I don't have that because I'm an interesting teacher, but that's just. Hey, I will say one of my buddies, he's a professor at Tuskegee. And before he was at Tuskegee, he was, I think, at the University of Iowa. And he said that daily, habitually, in a big classroom, like one of those, I think it had, like theater seating, on the front row, a guy would bring his pillow daily, habitually, and he would fall asleep on the front row. And so after a few weeks, my buddy, he said, hey, can you wait for a minute after class? And the guy did. And he said, look, so this is a college class. You don't get participation points. Like, you get no credit for just being here, you know?
Mhm.
So like, why bother if you're going to sleep every day? And he said, oh, well, so here's the thing. My roommate at home is a terribly loud snorer, and I cannot sleep in my dorm. I dropped your class weeks ago, but I find your voice very soothing. So
That's
he was like,
amazing.
knock yourself out. Go for it.
That's funny.
That's funny because yeah, so obviously students they're in college students they're out late partying and everything. So when they come to class, especially if it's a 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. class, they're tired and they're falling asleep. I get it. I'm not offended by it. In fact, I kind of find it funny that they're falling asleep. So I think that's funny to me. But also people who are on their cell phones and like texting on their cell phones and thinking that I don't notice that they're texting on their cell phones. Like I can clearly see you texting on your cell phone. So that's always kind of funny to me that the students do high schoolers do that? Do they have their cell phones or you take that away from them?
They have them, and we do try to utilize them to some extent. Like we well, I say that we it's a graphic design class. We're very project based, and so my time in front of the class is quite limited. And then for the bulk of the class, I'm tutoring one-on-one while they're working on projects. And so that's one reason they don't fall asleep is I they don't have long to fall asleep and before it's time to work on the projects. Now I'll walk around and help. But um, we design a lot of things that ultimately go on like all kind of social media platforms. And so we like cell phones and they can look and see, oh, my thing got posted today and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I used to have a rule when I first started teaching. I used to have a no technology rule in my class, and that's just not possible now. Like it's
yeah.
just not so first of all, because the textbook went all digital, right? So
Mhm.
the textbook, I want them to follow along with the textbook. So it's digital now. So that's first thing I can't do it. But also now I don't care. Like if you're on if you're in the class and you are paying attention, and then every once in a while you want to like send an email to somebody or go on Facebook for a second, I honestly don't care,
Mhm.
right? Because I'm walking around the classroom anyways. So it's like if you're not paying attention, you're not paying attention.
Right.
So honestly, now
It'll
I don't
show.
need.
It'll show on your test grade.
Yeah, and also I'll call you out. So too, like like I'll start teaching. I'll say something, and then I'm like, oh yeah, and Gary, if you want to get off your Facebook for a second so you can hear this, like I'll say something like that, right? But it's all it's just part of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you think about that, Acid?
I'm just glad I'm not a teacher. That's that's I was not born to teach. I was not born to educate others and to lead the younger generation to greatness. That was not in my repertoire of things. However, I can get all of them to school safely so they can listen to y'all. So that I can do. Um, so I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if me and you have spoken recently about my new job change, Clay. I think the last time we spoke, I was driving the bus.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
I'm not doing that anymore.
Really?
They apparently found it necessary to put me in charge of everyone. So
Congratulations.
thank you. Yeah, I've been doing that since last spring, since March, about
Wow.
spring break, right before spring break. But yes, I'm doing that now. But
Did you enjoy,
I'll still get all the kids there safe. I can't
good.
help if they get arrested on the way, but
Do you enjoy the new switch over?
it's a double-edged sword. That's a complicated question.
I see.
Has it gotten better?
It's-
Because so Clay,
It has gotten better.
Acid had when we first got the job, he was often expressing his frustrations with the new job and the level of work that he had to do and everything. But so things have gotten better for you. Have you gotten used to it? Do you feel like it comes in waves?
Yeah, it's definitely in waves. And really, it's not even waves. It's more sporadic than anything else. Like summer's great because nothing's happening in the summer. I mean, we still have to be there because summer school. We're still transporting kids to summer school, but that's only like 6 buses or 7 buses or something like that, which is easy to deal with. The the challenge comes with one, not having enough drivers. That's a big challenge. Because I mean, there's a national bus driver shortage right now. I mean, I think we're still short like 16 or so drivers that we need. So when those drivers that we do have call in sick or are not able to come in for whatever reason, I mean, guess who doesn't? Guess who doesn't get a ride to school? You know, I mean, it's just simple as that. We've promised to get them home every afternoon. Whether you know, so if a driver, you know, we say we've got 10 drivers out one day, those 10 routes will not run in the morning. But we will promise to get them home, whether, you know, we have other drivers go ahead and run their routes and then come back to the school and grab those kids and run those kids home. So they might get home, you know, 5:30, 6 o'clock, but they're getting home, you know, so we just can't promise to get them to school, in the morning just because of time restrictions, you know, tardy bell rings. I mean, we could try, but it's more headache than it's worth. So it's just easier for parents or guardians to take their kids to school if something like that happens. But over the last, I would say, month or so, it has gotten better. We've hired a bunch of drivers. They're in training right now. So when we get back, we'll have a nice handful of drivers that we'll be training. And hopefully by the end of the school year, we'll be prepared for when the next wave quits or retires or whatever. So that's kind of what we're trying to get on top of things, because we, you know, it's coming. I mean, it happens every year. You usually have 4 or 5 drivers either quit or retire, and you just kind of have to prepare for it. But I think we're going to be ahead of the game this year, just because we're ready for it.
Now, with all the changes, do the wheels on the bus, do they still go round and round? Is that
They kind of swerve a little bit. As the police follow. Yeah, as the police follow them.
All right, fantastic. Clay, let me ask you this. As a fellow teacher, although you're teaching high school a little bit different, what do you do in the summertime? Do you teach summer school, or you just take the whole summer off? What are you doing?
We vacation some. I will put out, hey, don't forget I'm a graphic design teacher. I can do graphic design myself. And that's wonderful, man. Like I can sit here on my couch and watch something on Amazon Prime with my wife and be working on Photoshop at the same time, you know. And so that has been a nice little you know, just a little financial boost and enjoyable and stuff like that. And we'll take trips and yeah, I do not do a lot of summer school, maybe a tiny bit of fast, but not a lot. Kind of, you know, recharge a little bit then. So what do you do?
So the past couple of years, and it looks like this is going to be the way it's going to be from now on, is I do teach online classes, non-synchronous, which I will say this, I'm on record, I hate. I hate teaching non-synchronous online classes with a passion. I hate it. I wish I could say no every time that they offer me the classes, but I can't, because they offer me money to do it. And it's you know, they're like,
you
hey,
can't say no to money.
They're like, hey, look, do you want this additional amount of money for the summer? And I'm like, I have to say yes to this. But I'm telling you, like, in terms of like my passion for teaching, all right, so what are the 2 things I love about teaching, right? Or what's the one thing the most that I love about teaching is the interaction with the students, right? Is the interaction of the students, the feeling that I get when I feel like I'm actually connecting with the students. You don't get that with non-synchronous, right? That's gone, right? You don't get that at all, because you're not teaching in person. You're not meeting together. All right. So what's the one thing I hate most about teaching? Oh, I'll say this. What's the one thing I dislike the most about teaching? Like, and all the things I love about teaching, what's at the bottom? Grading is my least favorite. What's the one thing you do the most with online teaching? Grading. What's the one thing you don't do at all? Connecting with the students.
Did you get a grad student to do that?
It's everything I do not like about teaching, and with nothing that I do like about teaching. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I'm literally doing this just because this is a great check that I can use so we can go on vacation.
Mm-hmm. So apart from the financial aspect of it, it is like the thorny stem of the rose with no rose.
Nice.
Yes.
That's horrible.
It's exactly. The funny thing about it is like, even if it was like synchronous online teaching, I would enjoy that. Like,
when you say non-synchronous online teaching, you basically, if I'm understanding you correctly, you record your lecture and you put it up on the website, and then they can go and look at it whenever they want.
Sometimes that could be the case, but in terms of what the classes that I teach, it's just the content is there. The textbook is there.
Oh, so
they
you
read
don't
the textbook, and I just grade their speeches.
So you don't do any lectures at all?
Nope.
Wow.
Not the online classes that I've been teaching, that I will be teaching in the summer. Yes. Now, there have been other online classes that I've taught, particularly at Georgia State. Right?
So what do you teach then, if you're not lecturing?
I am not teaching anything.
They're reading a book and answering your questions.
Yes.
So when you do watch their speeches, do you sense the declination in quality from the students who are learning by just reading this, as opposed to a student who has learned by watching and experiencing the holistic version of teaching? Did you see what I'm saying? Is the quality lower in terms of their output because it is a different source of material that they're receiving in? You see what I'm saying? They're reading it as opposed to experiencing it. So
I don't want to paint with a broad brush, right? Because I've taught online classes at Georgia State, I've taught at Auburn, I've taught different types of classes, and I've taught different ways: asynchronous, synchronous, hybrid. I've done the whole shebang, right? But the classes that I will be teaching online from now on will be non-synchronous classes. Here's the problem with non-synchronous classes. When a student signs up for a non-synchronous class, they're doing it for one primary reason. It's because I need to get my credits, but I don't want to have to work that hard to get them, right? Mm-hmm. So they don't read anything. They don't do anything. They just wing it. So yes. They're not.
This seems like something. No, I'm not demeaning your status as a teacher by any means, but when it comes to these classes, it sounds like anybody could do this.
Yes.
If all of your questions are multiple choice.
So here's the problem. So
then
the grading is where you can make the argument that not anybody can do it, because you have to
grade. Because if it's like essay based or something,
standard,
then no. Yeah.
Right. And I've graded so many speeches that I can grade like I know exactly I know exactly what I'm looking for. I know what to grade on everything. So, but yes. Right.
Yeah. So if it was all multiple choice, I would be going to apply for a new job tomorrow.
That is very true. But I will tell you this, I don't enjoy that. I much rather stand in front of a class.
But a machine can grade the papers. That's the thing. If you do that.
Right. But the classes I teach, I don't have that. They're not tests. So there is subjective.
But could you set it up that way?
Oh, most certainly. Well, not for the classes I teach. No. Well, some classes, maybe.
Just in general, like if you were teaching a math class this way, and all, they have the textbook, they're learning it on their own. Here are the questions, multiple choice, right or correct answer, run it through the machine. No one would know who was on the other side of that, who the teacher was, because.
Because here's the problem, Clay. This as a teacher, right? So, let's say you have an assignment, right? And this assignment has a particular rubric, right? I'm looking for this, 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 and this in this particular assignment. When you're teaching in person, you can remind students for weeks, hey, look, guys, we have this assignment coming up, and I'm looking for this, 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 and this, right? And then the students can ask questions, and then they can elaborate, and you can talk about exactly what you're looking for when you're grading these assignments, right? And once again, the assignment is online. The rubric is online, hypothetically, right? It's online. But in the in-person class, you are there, and the students are constantly coming to class. So you are constantly in dialogue with the students, reminding them about the assignment that is coming up, right? And for most students, they're not even like thinking about an assignment until the couple days before the assignment is due, right? But if they come in class in person, you are reminding the students that the assignment is coming up and exactly what you're looking for. In an online class, all of that stuff is in the actual textbook. There's no reminders, there's no in-class dialogue, there's like all of that stuff that helps the student remember is not there. So it makes sense. Like I don't want to put it on the students, because obviously you could just say something like, oh, the students don't try, blah, blah, blah. Like that's not fair, right? Because that's not, it's not fair to the students, because when you teach in person as a teacher, you're there to guide them through the class, right? That's why every time when I teach in person, before I even get to the question of the day, I have an announcements and reminders section. Like I'll go, all right, everybody, just got a couple of announcements, blah, 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 blah. And then, oh yeah, a couple of reminders, the next couple of weeks are going to look like this. We have this coming up. I do that every class at the beginning of class, because students need that. When they take online classes, that's not there. And it's so incredibly important for students. It would be important for me, right? So I don't look down on students for not doing well in online classes. Yeah.
Have you ever watched this? Well, okay, before I ask you that question, have you ever had a student to absolutely blow off your class, but then complain about the grade, saying that you gave them too low of a grade? What's the argument there? Because this is pretty common, I think, among college professors.
So, every situation is different. But so I'll sit there and go, it's funny because I rarely have a student who is just not doing the work come to me at the end of the semester and say, hey, I feel like I deserve a better grade. That doesn't happen that often for me. It's the students who do the work and feel like they deserve a better grade that's the most complaints that I get. But in that situation, in both situations, I go, all right, so here's assignment blank, and this is how well you did on this, and this is the things that you did not do that you were supposed to. Here's assignment number 2, and so I'll just sit there and go boom, 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 and at the end of the conversation, they're like, oh, okay, all right. So it's really
conversation.
It's the conversation, and really, I feel like a lot of students they don't get that a lot with teachers. Like they don't get that conversation with teachers. So for me, I've always I always enjoy when a student comes to my class or comes to my office hours or talks to me afterward, because I feel like they're actually trying.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll go, okay, so they're like, hey, I don't understand why I got this grade. Okay, let's sit down, let's talk about it. Okay, boom, 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 right? So I wanted you to do this, but you did this. Oh yeah, you're right. You're right. You did tell me to do it, and I did that. So next time, do this. Oh, okay, yeah. And then that's the conversation. So it's as simple as that.
I have started, Anthony, on day 1 of classes. I'll tell the students, look, you're going to be making a sandwich all semester, and at the end of the semester, you have to eat that sandwich. So I would advise, don't make a yucky sandwich, because at the end of this semester, you have to eat a yucky sandwich. I'm not going to eat it for you. I can't eat it for you, you know? And I think it helps a little bit. I'll mention it all throughout sporadic, you know, like, wait a minute. Hey, you know, that's walking down the path of making a yucky sandwich. And it seems to help a little bit.
One thing I do on the first day of class, I'll open my rate my professor score. I'll open it up. I'll go to an evaluation where I feel like is a really good description of the class, and it usually goes by like this. It usually goes, Mr. Nanar makes the class fun, and he helps me with my speech anxiety. He is a hard grader. Like, and I'll go, hey, look, this is true. Like I can be a hard grader. Like I hold you up to a high standard. Then I'll kind of point to it. So I feel like it used to be a bit where I would make a joke where I'll say, hey, did anyone ever like, has anyone heard anything about this class before? And like, everyone's like, I heard this. Like, has anyone heard about me? Like, and I was like, did you guys look me up on Rate My Professor? And then I'll just flip up over and Rate My Professor. It gets a laugh. It's funny. The kids love it. Right. Yeah.
That's good. They know in advance. Now they know. I am not on our project based class. I'm not a difficult grader, and what will hurt people is just apathy, not turning in things at all, things like that. And so, if someone were to get like a 59, I would not be inclined to give them the extra point because I gave them the extra points already by being a lenient grader. You know what I mean? Like if someone has a 59 in my class, they probably don't deserve a 50. You know what I mean? Because it's a subjective class in terms of grading, and there's a little wiggle room. And I tried to err on the side of grace on that. And so when they get a grade and the numbers fall as they fall, any bonus that's to be gotten has already been gotten because I'm a lenient grader. Does that make sense?
It does make perfect sense. The funny thing about it is, so obviously I teach at Auburn, but I also teach at Georgia State, and I'm actually a much lenient grader at Georgia State. Just because the makeup of the class is different as well. So one issue that I run into at Georgia State is you'll have, like you said, students who just don't turn assignments in, or they just don't do quizzes. They just don't do it. And then you'll have a student who comes to class every day. They're participating. They're like, they bring an energy to the class. Like because that's very important to me as a teacher, is like someone who participates, but also is like, who makes the class interesting by being there. I'm sure you've had students like that in the past, right? Where they're like, not only are you participating, but you're making the class better. Like the class is more enjoyable by you being here. But then they just don't complete an assignment. And you're like, hey, look, by not completing this assignment, this is a huge 0 that's going to hurt your grade. And then they're like, oh, I didn't get to it. I could blah, blah, blah. Can I turn it in late? And then obviously, then you run into a problem where you're like, I want to allow them to turn this in late. And then like, I feel like there's a boundary, there's a line that you as a teacher needs to make. And I'm still kind of not at Georgia State. I feel like I'm having a hard time figuring out where that line is.
We always, every project, we have a soft deadline and a hard deadline, and they know it up front every week. So Friday, listen guys, this thing is due Friday. It's not due Monday, it's due Friday. Go ahead and get it in Friday. But if you can't, thank goodness Monday's here. And so penalty free, if you get it in Monday, it's kind of late, but it'll be as though it weren't if you turn it in Monday. If they don't turn in Monday, it was like, well, I'm sorry, you didn't get in. And I'll take it for half credit after that. But it stings. If they get a 50, it stings. And so they know that there are 2 boats coming by every week. And so a handful will, for whatever reason, technology doesn't do what it's supposed to do, or they're sick or whatever, so they'll miss Friday, but they know they got to get it in Monday, and if they don't, then it's going to really sting. So that has been helpful for us.
I think that's a great idea, and that's something about I've been thinking about, where you have your first deadline where you get full credit, and then you need to have one additional deadline where there's points taken off to the point where it's like it's a pretty significant point deduction, but it's still not a zero. And then after that, I think you need to be able to say, I'm sorry, no, I can't give you any credit for that. And that's, for me, I have a hard time. At Auburn, it's different. Auburn's different because I have someone over me who like will not allow me to do that. Like, you need to, like, this is the rule. So I'm pretty steadfast on that. But at Georgia State, that rule doesn't apply.
Mm.
So then it comes to me to make the decision. At Auburn, I can just say, oh no, this is a policy decision. I can't change it. So yeah, that's one issue that I run into. It's teacher talk here today at Sci-Fi Gangsters. We're talking everything teaching. You have anything to add, Acid?
No, I do not. Let's talk about who the next Superman's going to be.
Clay, do you have a suggestion who the next Superman's going to be?
I don't know. I always liked Jim from The Office. I know he's been talked about in the Fantastic Four movies. I have no idea who's actually in the running, but anytime I can get Jim in The Office in something, I'll probably vote for him. So,
not a bad suggestion. Acid, what do you think?
You know, it's a. I saw where did I see somewhere? It was they had mentioned, Henry not being in the next Superman movie and whatnot. Which honestly, sidebar, I think he would make an amazing James Bond, by the way. James Bond's never going to die anyway. Those movies will keep coming out until, our great grandchildren are on the earth. So, if they get him to be the next Superman, or the next James Bond, I would be okay with that. But what's I can't think of his name. I've seen him on multiple TV shows, and I think he was in that stripper movie with all the other guys. Dadgummit, I can see his face now. Anyway.
Talking about Magic Mike?
That movie. Yeah, he was in that movie. The bearded buff guy. I'm trying to look him up right now. What is his name?
I'm not familiar.
It'll. I'll find it in a minute. But I don't know. I really wish Henry would just keep going, because I did watch Black Adam a couple of days ago.
Okay.
And at the end, he makes a cameo appearance, right? Right after the credits, roll or whatever, like Marvel movies do. But this being DC and whatnot, I want to see
James Gunn. James Gunn's rebooting the whole thing. He's starting from scratch.
Black Adam wasn't horrible. It wasn't the best movie I've ever seen in the DC universe, but it's definitely not the worst. I know how much you rave about Peacekeeper and how funny you look. I can't stand it, man. Did you try
watching? Did you try watching the show?
I did, and
okay.
I don't mind a little raunchiness and profanity every once in a while, but that was so over the top, it just made it unattractive.
Let me tell you this.
I don't watch it anymore.
The first episode is definitely the raunchiest.
Is it? Because I made it through the first episode and I went, I can't do this. I cannot continue to do this.
The first episode is by far the raunchiest. It's not as raunchy throughout the whole.
Because raunchy has its place. Like, I get it. Like, it has its place in TV and films and whatnot.
Which is that's Claiborne Cox's catchphrase.
It is. Yep. Raunchiness is key.
Raunchiness is key. That's what Clay already says.
But yeah, I made it through that first episode and just I immediately went nope, and I can't do this. Because one, you didn't see a lot of his powers. You didn't see. You saw right there at kind of the end of the first episode where he like reflects what's her face from the apartment building. I can't remember now. It's been so long since I've seen it, but so you see that, but I mean, not a lot of powers. The comedy wasn't solid on the first episode. It was just more F this and let's screw this person, and I was like, I just can't do this. This is not good.
I've got an idea for another Superman. While I was listening to you, Acid, this came to me. So, DC has had its struggles keeping up with Marvel in the movie industry. And so I have not seen, but I've heard that the guy from Twilight did pretty good Batman. While they've got something working for him, let's let him be Superman too.
Why
Like,
not, right?
why would they switch from something that's working right now?
And when they do a Batman versus Superman movie again, he could just beat
Just
himself
him,
up.
just him twice.
Could just be him. Joe Manganiello. That's who I was thinking of. Joe Manganiello.
Okay, all right. Well, there you go.
Is the next Superman. I think he'd be fun. He's a good actor.
When you say reboot, are they rebooting like origin stories? I mean,
God, I hope not. Like
the word is not out just yet, but basically James Gunn was hired to be the new like Kevin Feige, basically, right? He's the new head person, and he canceled everything. So it looks like no one's coming back. So it's kind of up in the air exactly what they're going to do. If they're going to reboot the whole thing, if they're going to keep some, are they going to keep Aquaman movies?
Like as much hate as it got, like the Zack Snyder Justice League, I really liked it. Like I really liked that. It was long. It was like 4 hours long. But as far as DC Universe go, that was really good. Like I really enjoyed that. I really enjoyed how dark it was and serious. The story was solid. Like everything about it was really good.
Well, that's a whole nother episode that we could talk about.
A whole nother episode, but
I've had a whole classes where we talk about it because I teach a comic book studies class, Clay, at Georgia State. So we talked about that a ton in that class.
The only complaint I've got about the current DC universe, as far as like actors and actresses go, is the Flash. I can't remember whoever's playing the Flash. Right?
He won't be playing the Flash anymore because
he's just not good.
Well, he's also got a bunch of legal trouble, so he won't be playing.
I hate it for him, but it's just.
Don't hate it for him because he's a horrible person.
He's a horrible person. Okay, well, I'm glad he's not going to be the Flash anymore because he was horrible. He was awful. Now the Flash. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think James Patterson, the Twilight guy, could
he should be the Flash as well.
Should be the Flash as well. Is it like an Eddie Murphy thing where he just plays every character?
Dude, that would be amazing.
Sometimes the best player has to take the team on his back to win a game. So
now I will say, my wife is a huge Batman fan. She loves Batman, like every Batman movie she's loved. She hated the newest one, like with a passion. Like hated it. Like we were actually talking about it at the dinner table tonight. How much that he just did not do well at all. He needs to. In her words, he needs to go back to Twilight.
Oh wow! Very.
So.
I have not seen it, so I cannot argue with her. I've only heard what I've heard from.
It's enjoyable. I enjoyed it. It's fine. There you go. It has its moments.
Okay.
Maybe it had too little James Patterson. Maybe if he were the arch nemesis in that movie as well.
Very good. Excellent. Well, that seems like a good place to end this episode. First of all, Clay, thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's always fun. Thank you for having me, and don't forget about me. Let's do it again.
Of course, you can check out Claiborne Cox's comedy at claibornecoxcomedy.com. He's always out there, doing comedy shows, baaing at the audience. He's like, bah, bah, bah. But that's kind of what he does. And Acid, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, sir.
Oh wow!
As always, you're extremely welcome. Yeah.
You can always check us out at sci-fi-gangsters.com. You can also check us out wherever you get your podcasts, and we're also on YouTube. That's the show for today. Goodbye, everybody.